Hello, my name's Justin McClure. I'm here today with
Will Sloan.
And you're listening to the Important Cinema Club. And today, we're talking about the most famous Japanese film director of all time, Ishiro Honda. No, I'm just kidding. We're talking about the famous
Takeshi.
one. Yeah, Beat Takeshi.
Yeah.
What other directors? Kinji Fukasaku.
Yeah, Sonny Chiba. We know our guys.
You know, Japanese films are kind of the kryptonite of this podcast. If there's any popular kind of output of a country in the world that we haven't talked about, it's Japanese.
Well, we have tried it occasionally.
Yes.
With mixed results, I think.
I mean, today we're talking about
Yasujiro Ozu.
And he's the great, like, beside Kurosawa. When we talk about Japanese cinema, it's usually these two guys. And is he a filmmaker that you had explored a lot?
No. And in fact, he's somebody who has sort of only opened up for me recently.
Yeah.
I remember when I was in high school reading, I think Roger Ebert say something along the lines of, and sooner or later all cinephiles get to Ozu and they walk with giants, or, you know, some poetic statement like that. And so I thought, I filed that in my head as like, oh, okay, to be a real cinephile, you gotta love Ozu. And so I think I rented Good Morning as a teenager, and I remember thinking, okay. And then in first year film studies class, they showed us Tokyo Story.
Yes.
Of course.
What a terrible place to watch that movie.
One of the great movies of all time, watched at 9 o'clock in the morning with a crowd of your fellow Philistines.
Yeah, bored, probably going on their laptops, checking websites.
Yeah, and, you know, I don't know if you ever saw a movie at Innis Town Hall at U of T, but that was back in the days where if anybody opened a door, it would cast light all over the screen, which happened 50 times in a movie.
Yep.
Terrible experience. So I was very bored as a teenager watching it.
I don't think I ever got into him in my cinephilia, but Ozu is one of those directors that when you read about him, you feel like you're like, oh, okay, I get what he does. Because his stuff is so formal and specific and repetitious in its themes and its stylistic conceits. When you read about him in, like, the great tomes by Donald Ritchie or by David Bordwell or The Transcendental Cinema by Paul Schrader, like, it's very clear what his intentions are. But like a lot of great classic filmmakers that we've talked about, you know, you actually have to experience the films to get the effect that people react to.
Well, because if you've seen a few of his movies, you know that he keeps returning to the same topic over and over again, which is the family and its dissolution. And you know that he has the same style in every movie. And you know that his movies even sound similar. They have similar titles, you know, Late Spring, An Autumn Afternoon, Early Summer.
Wait, is this the remake of that film, or is it the original version? It's very easy to get them confused.
Floating Weeds, or The Story of the Floating Weeds.
Yep.
You know? So yeah, I think it's easy to maybe take Ozu for granted, or say, oh, okay, you know, I don't want to put myself through the experience. I get it. I've seen one, I've seen them all. But I don't know, that said, whenever I do watch an Ozu movie,
love it.
I mean, what always happens is I spend 70 minutes like nodding my head, being like, okay, when are we going to get to the fireworks factory? And then at the 70-minute mark, it's like it hits me in the face and I'm like a blubbering mess.
But you don't even reach the fireworks factory either, because like, Ozu is all about the elliptical nature of storytelling. Like, oh, they're setting up a big wedding. A big wedding's coming. The next scene, the wedding has already passed and things have moved on from there. And it's that absence that creates the impact. It's kind of like his formal style exists because when he deviates from that style a little bit, that hits like a thunderbolt to viewers.
And what is that style? Because if you've ever been to a first-year film studies class, you probably know the general contours of it. His style is rigorous and minimalist and very consistent, and he didn't give himself any wiggle room outside of it. And he created his own film grammar that is unlike anybody else. So oftentimes the camera would be very low placed. Typically, when you're watching a movie, the camera is to people's eye levels, but it's like the cameraman is on his knees.
He also loves to have characters actually kind of like talk into the camera. He never does over the shoulders connecting both people in a shot.
And typically in dialogue scenes in movies, if there's a conversation, there will be more cross-cutting. Like, it may cut to somebody in the middle of somebody else talking, but no, it's like you see somebody talk, and then it cuts to somebody else talk.
Also, Mr. Ozu, don't don't you know you're crossing the line?
Oh, yeah, this is it. He always violates the 180-degree line. This is the one fact
that everybody knows. And what's interesting about Ozu is that when you read about his history and where he came from, like, he didn't arrive fully formed making these kind of films. It took him a while to get there, and he made a lot of pictures during the silent era just trying to find his style.
His film career started in 1923 when he was, I think, 20 years old or so, and he joined the Shochiku Company, which was one of the big Japanese film companies, working as an assistant cameraman. 4 years later, he made his first directorial film, and a lot of his early films, he had a whole series of college films, light comedies. I graduated, but I flunked, but...
People said that he made movies in, like, the Harold Lloyd mode, in the sense that it's like you said, very light comedies, usually around one figure.
I did, in fact, see a clip from one of his movies where there's a woman standing in front of a poster for Speedy, which is like in Evil Dead when there's the torn up Jaws poster.
Ozu's like, I'm going to show Lloyd that I can do better than him.
But he also made crime films like Dragnet Girl. Sometimes they dig those out, and they're sort of
wow, Ozu made this at the retrospective.
That's what they're always positioned as.
Look at the camera move.
Because, of course, later on in his mature period, another one of his stylistic trademarks is that the camera never moved. Locked down, and there are only a few locations in Ozu's mature period. You got the home, and sometimes you got work, sometimes you got school, and sometimes you got the bar.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah. I would say 80% of his movies take place at home, and the homes are those very traditional looking Japanese houses, and he always frames it, through doorways and peeking through windows and walls with heavy geometric shapes, lines.
Well, Ozu is all about that repetition and that ritualism in his filmmaking style, and that's because it's an extension of the Japanese society that he likes to portray. This ritualistic, everyone goes through their paces, and the drama comes when there's, again, a deviation from those norms.
So yeah, not just the consistent visual style, but also the consistent themes that he keeps coming back to. It's, yes, the family unit and its dissolution, but also kind of the march of progress, the march of time. Progress in quotation marks here because he views progress, I think, with suspicion. The family is very important to him because it represents tradition, and of course it represents tradition to Japanese society as well. This is why, his movies didn't get exported until long
1962, I think, was the first time his movies hit North American soil.
I actually think it might have been 72.
72.
Like a full decade after his death. And a lot of that was because of the advocacy of Donald Ritchie.
Yes. Donald Ritchie, for people that don't know, is the king of bringing Japanese cinema to English-speaking places. Yeah. He's the one who wrote, the text on Japanese cinema. He's the one that kind of, I don't want to say excavated, but just transported Japanese cinema and said, this is why it's important, this is why it's different from American cinema, and this is why it should be more culturally known.
And the Ozu movies were never exported because these themes of family and tradition were seen as too Japanese. The Japanese, according to Ritchie, people in the Japanese film industry regarded Ozu as, if not the most popular filmmaker, then the official filmmaker. He's like the chronicler of what Japan is.
And the reason that Kurosawa's film kind of crossed over is because Kurosawa is making entertainment.
Sure.
When people would talk about Kurosawa, they would often talk about him in terms of the blockbuster art director. Actually, that's what I think I named the episode 100 episodes ago.
So long ago.
Yeah.
Don't listen to that one.
Oh boy, I'm sure it's terrible.
And yeah, Kurosawa is also very cosmopolitan and very influenced by, foreign filmmakers. John Ford, of course.
But Ozu said that he was also influenced by American cinema, and he loved American cinema, citing that Citizen Kane actually made quite an impact on him. And what's interesting is that he didn't translate that into just a mirror image to his inspirations, but he kind of synthesized them into something that represented his milieu and what he thought was important in Japanese society.
Now, we both watched Late Spring this week, which is another one of those movies where, for 90 minutes, it's okay, detail accumulating. And then sometime around the end, huge punch in the gut.
The thing about Late Spring is, I was suspicious of it through most of it because it's the idea of them being she needs to marry, she needs to marry, she needs to marry. The story is about a woman in her late 20s who's taking care of her father. their mother is out of the picture.
He's a widower. Yeah.
And that she's uncomfortable with the idea of getting married and leaving her father alone to take care of himself. That is the principal reason why she hasn't gone and explored and started her own life.
But what becomes clearer is that actually she loves living with her father. They have a wonderful relationship together. Their family unit is very strong, but the father understands, okay, well, it's time. This can't last forever. It's lasted too long already. She really ought to go start her own life. And in fact, I'm now going to get married too, to try to hasten the dissolution. I don't want to spoil the shock ending, but there may be a little bit of a subterfuge going on here.
Yeah, I mean, that's the one thing that I was like, I don't like this, is the fact that they're like, we should get them together, so they should get married.
Yeah.
Like, this needs to happen.
And it all builds up to a really devastating scene where she's about to get married and she tells her father, I don't want to get married. It's frankly not possible for me to be happier than I am right now. Why does this have to change? And then as he lays it out, happiness isn't something that is given to you on a silver platter. Happiness is something that you'll have to work towards. You may not be immediately happy, but maybe after a year, maybe after 10 years, you will be happy in this new life, and you can't live with me forever, etc. And I'd be curious to know how you feel about that, because I think it's open to interpretation, because I actually think he might be right.
I think that he is right, and the thing that, like I was saying, that made me suspicious for a long time was the fact that the film seems to position at first that she's being forced, because this is what's culturally accepted, into this marriage. Like, it's an arranged marriage,
yeah,
where two people are and that I don't like.
And the idea that, like, she's a spinster woman.
Yeah,
and there's nothing
at the age
less
of 27.
Yeah. I mean, some of this has to do with just, like,
time and place that it was being made.
Time and place, but also, like, there's definitely, that still has not gone away. I think people still feel that, particularly in certain communities.
Well, it's the idea as well of, you may be happy where you are, but at a certain point, you need to go and explore different things. You need different flavors of happiness. I mean, to use a very crude analogy, like, you can't eat pizza every day.
Right.
Like, you love pizza, and, it's not technically that bad for you, but eventually there's an accumulation that will happen, and that you need different stuff to have, the entire rainbow of experiences.
It's interesting that he was regarded as just too colloquial, too Japanese to export, because these feelings are very universal. I think we've all had the experience, to some extent, if not exactly this experience, but some experience of having to move on even though you don't quite want to.
It's the definition of getting stuck in a rut, right? Which is like, you could be happy and you feel every day you're kind of going on. Why would I change things? There's nothing bad happening.
And the change is hard. It's always very
because
traumatic.
It's also going to probably be miserable at the beginning. Like,
Yeah.
It's not going to go from happiness to a different kind of happiness.
Yeah.
There's going to be a shift. And I mean, Ozu, the way that he kind of builds to that moment is amazing, because he has the character played by Setsuko Hara be happy throughout the movie. She's smiling, she's like joking, and you wonder, like, well, if she's happy in this situation, why change it? And it's like, because you have to.
Yeah.
Like, this can't last, and it will only calcify over time. And that without discovering these experiences, that's an issue. And I think that the film does build to that moment in a beautiful way.
His most famous film, of course, is 1953's Tokyo Story, which I believe on the Sight and Sound poll in 2012 was voted by the directors as the best movie of all time.
Yeah.
A
bummer.
A little bit of trivia there for you. And actually, speaking of his influences from the West, this one is heavily influenced by Make Way for Tomorrow.
I love Make Way for Tomorrow.
Too. Yeah.
I do not like that director. Woo, boy.
Leo McCarey?
Yeah, crazy Republican.
Oh, yeah. Well, I run hot and cold on Leo McCarey. He made Duck Soup.
He did. And The Awful Truth, that's a fun one.
Yeah, there's good stuff in there.
Yeah.
But I thought it was funny that I found a quote by Ozu where he referred to Tokyo Story as one of his most melodramatic pictures. I guess because it has a death in it, but really not at all.
And maybe because the emotional undercurrent is always on floating on the surface.
Yeah. Well, this film is about an elderly couple who travel from their small rural town in Japan to Tokyo to visit their grown children. Their grown children include a community doctor, a hairdresser. There's also a woman who was married to their son who died in the war, and she has essentially become like their honorary daughter.
And she's the only child who treats them with any respect.
Yes, but it's not like the others don't respect them exactly. It's just they're busy. They have grandkids, or they have kids.
Yeah.
The old people have grandkids, and they have jobs. They have stuff they have to do. Frankly, having these two old people at their home is a bit of a bummer. Mm-hmm. And so what do? They say, hey, maybe let's send these old people off to a spa for the weekend. The old people take the hint. They decide to go back home, and unfortunately, on the way back home, Mother falls ill. Spoiler warning, I guess.
Can you spoil these movies?
Well, the movies end exactly how you think they're going to end.
Yeah, there's no big surprises to any Ozu films. He's not like, one of them was a werewolf the entire time.
Well, wouldn't that be wonderful if it was? But she's convalescing. The children come home. The mother dies. The children are, of course, very sad and upset about it. The children even say, maybe we should have given her a little bit more time. But the next day they have to go back to Tokyo. Father's left on his own. The father tells the widowed daughter-in-law, don't worry about us, you should go get married. Mm-hmm. And he is basically left there to look at the sunset and contemplate life and die, basically. And one of the things that's interesting about the movie is that, there are no uncomplicated emotions in it.
It never, one way to read it, and I've read people say this, is like, the kids could have spent more time with their parents. Why didn't they just give them a little bit more time? But it's like, yeah, but life is like that, right? Maybe it was just like this particular weekend, or it just didn't work out for them.
Well, there's a really heartbreaking scene where one of the kids is talking to the mother, and the mother says, "Oh yeah, I probably won't be back out to Tokyo. I know you're very busy. If you can, if you're able to come out to my town, I forget what the town's called, by all means." And the daughter says, "Oh, thank you, but it's very far." And then they part, and I don't know. That scene was like a punch in the face. But there's no huge confrontation, and on some level, it's true, it is far.
Yeah.
It's hard when have a career.
Well, you visit your family every few weeks, so you'll never have a Tokyo Story situation.
I think my parents would disagree with that.
Really?
That assessment.
They should speak to my parents. Maybe it'll make them feel a little bit better.
I would say that for many reasons this movie hit me very hard.
Oh, it did?
Yes. Yeah.
It's interesting because it is a film that is classic and it's one of those perfect objects, and it's never one I want to reach over on a shelf and watch because it is boring at times.
But
it's also, like you said, when you get into an Ozu film, you know what an Ozu film is. There's no qualms about where his story is going or the emotions he's going to play on at the end. And it's interesting that I'd be like, I don't want to reach for it, when I'll reach for things that are much more flightier entertainment that I still know how those will probably end as well.
I think part of the secret to appreciating Ozu is to appreciate just being in his world and living there for a while. He loves quotidian details. He loves objects. I know Roger Ebert has written extensively about teacups in his movies. And if you enjoy looking at, the seaside with Ozu, if you enjoy being there on a hot day in Floating Weeds with Ozu.
I think that Floating Weeds was probably my favorite Ozu film that I've seen. And I think it's because it's the one that I think successfully hits that mark of not only is there a bunch of stuff going on, not only are there a lot of complicated emotions, but where it builds to is, like you say about the other ones, emotionally satisfying in a way that, I don't know if it's lighter than his other pictures.
Well, compared to Tokyo Story, where Tokyo Story never has, an explosion.
Yeah, Floating Weeds does.
Floating Weeds does, yeah. And Floating Weeds has a central character who's very difficult.
Yes. So, what's Floating... Because you watched that one as well, right?
I did. That's a story about this theater troupe who travel around Japan, and they come to this seaside town where the main actor in the theater troupe long ago had an affair with a woman that produced a child. The child, who's now almost fully grown, he's late teenagers. The actor has always visited the family, but this child has always thought it was his uncle. And he's back in the town, and he's really starting to reconnect with this old mistress of his, which causes problems in his relationship with his current mistress.
And also problems with the theatrical troupe, who are not making enough money to be able to continue to the next town.
Yeah.
And so you have all of these things kind of spinning around each other, and it's all the Ozu-ness that ever Ozu'd, but this time in color.
That's right.
And this time, there's almost a more comedic bent that you see in his earlier films that's present in Floating Weeds that is not always, I mean, it's definitely not there in Tokyo Story. And in Late Spring, it's kind of bubbling on the surface, but it's not as, the word I'm looking for is fun, as it is in Floating Weeds.
Sure, fair enough.
Because, like, if I was going to recommend somebody, like, oh, you want to check out Ozu, I would say check out Floating Weeds. I mean, the thing is that all of his movies are all variations on each other in that last period, the last 13 pictures, I believe, are all essentially, like, the same template. So once you see one, then you can go exploring variations of that.
Yeah, I definitely think, like, Floating Weeds may be probably the most accessible one. It is in color and in beautiful color,
and I don't even mean
stunning,
like
stylized color.
And I don't mean it in the sense of like finally color, like it looks like real life. But like you said, it is stylized, and he is doing some stuff that is not always present in his other films, almost as an entry point to people.
Yeah, it's a little bit more. The emotions are heavier, so it plays a little bit more like, I don't want to say a normal movie.
A normal movie. Well, Ozu could be compared to like British kitchen sink dramas, but where Ozu, the difference is, as well as it is about the everyday details, kitchen sink dramas have a tendency, like you said, of like simmering to secrets and lies at the end. And Ozu, other than maybe something like Floating Weeds, always keeps it under the surface. And I understand why that is an attraction to people who want cinema that speak to them in a way that doesn't reflect the like, oh, it's like everything else I see.
And another one that I might recommend to beginners is Good Morning, which is a very sort of light and charming one. And I said that Ozu has opened up for me more in recent years, and a lot of that I think has to do with getting older.
I'm as young as I ever was.
Well, inside, mentally, I'm as young as I ever was. But my aching knee that's been giving me troubles would say otherwise. And I've lived long enough now to see the places that I live dramatically change. I've lived long enough to see everyone I know age by 30 years. I've lived long enough to see
Jerry Lewis died.
Yeah. My God. My relationship with everybody I know has evolved in my lifespan. I think that's a reason why I and probably most teenagers would not gravitate towards Ozu.
Yeah, because you want to live in the now, where everything seems present.
And in Good Morning, you can see him visualize this post-war society where there's the community, there's the neighborhood, where the Japanese houses are done in the traditional style, and surrounding them are these sort of industrial areas. Everybody has this new consumer culture, TVs and dishwashers and vacuum cleaners and stuff like that. These sort of encroachments on the old way. And Ozu is smart enough to not make that seem like an unambiguously bad thing. Like, no emotions are uncomplicated in his films. But if you see communities that you love and people that you love get older or be steamrolled by progress, that can be a bittersweet or difficult thing.
Should I watch Good Morning or another film that starts with G that's Japanese and touches on all these bases, Godzilla's Revenge?
I say, why not
watch them both.
Have your vegetables, then have a little dessert.
That's right. So that was our episode on Ozu, and now we have a very special announcement.
Oh, this one's been a long time coming, folks.
So people know that we love physical media. We also love public domain films. What if we put both of them together?
Folks, when you were growing up, did you ever go to your local gas station, your local Walmart, and there'd be a little rack of public domain DVDs, stuff that the store bought in bulk?
Whoa, Master with Cracked Fingers starring Jackie Chan. I've never heard of this one before.
What's this movie starring Jack Nicholson called The Little Shop of Horrors? Is that the same as the Rick Moranis movie?
Yep.
Ooh, Night of the Living Dead. 5 different copies of Night of the Living Dead.
Yeah.
We grew up on public domain DVD labels, and we've always dreamed of having our own.
And we thought, how would we approach this? Because we cannot do new scans of movies. It is not within our budget. And the films that we want to put out, sometimes they benefit from being watched in that public domain way.
So here's the thought. What if you saw a movie the way it was meant to be seen on a shitty public domain DVD transfer, pan and scan, beautiful, glorious 1.33 to 1.
Yep.
But what if you got that DVD loaded with contextual extras?
The criterion of public domain DVD labels. And we're calling it
the Important Cinema Club Bargain Bin Classics.
And our first release is going to be a little film called The Dragon Lives Again.
Oh, wait, you mean the film in which Bruce Lee goes to hell and fights James Bond, Dracula, The Exorcist, The Godfather, and Emmanuel, and teams up with Popeye the Sailor?
The same one!
Oh, man.
So me and Will have been working on this Blu-ray, and we went all out on it. We recorded an introduction to the disc. We did, I think, the best commentary we've ever done together.
We've done a feature-length commentary, probably the first ever recorded on The Dragon Lives Again.
That's right.
Full of facts and info and analysis.
We did a 20-minute discussion of our favorite Bruceploitation films, and I also cut together a 70-minute trailer reel of just Bruceploitation films.
I mean, that's worth the price of admission on its own.
I even went in and added the name and the year of the film as each trailer appears, just so you don't have to be like, oh wait, is it under a different title? I don't know. You can find them very easily.
Yeah, you'll see highlights from your favorite films by Bruce Lee, Dragon Lee.
Yep.
Probably you'll even see pictures of Bruce Lee himself.
And we also have a very special feature, and hopefully as we make more of these, this will be a regular thing, is that we have a bonus feature.
It is the Aquarius releasing classic Fist of Fear, Touch of Death, starring Fred Williamson, Ron Van Cleef, Adolf Caesar, Bill Louis, and
Bruce Lee.
Technically. This is a film where they took, for about a third of it, they took a childhood film that Bruce Lee was in and dubbed it What's Up Tiger Lily style.
Yeah, but they also have an Academy Award nominated actor interviewing Bruce Lee in the film.
Oh, do they? Fist of Fear, Touch of Death is a notorious film, a film that, some would say pisses on Bruce Lee's grave. Mm-hmm. But I like it, and we recorded an introduction to it, and the Blu-ray also contains liner notes with contextualizing essays about the films.
And an interview with the director of Fist of Fear, Touch of Death that you did.
That's right.
In the liner notes. The liner notes are like the maximum that you can have in a Blu-ray case. So it's like a thick little booklet. And as an extra bonus, I may say limited to the first 50 because I don't know if I'll make more, but Will, years ago, bought lobby cards for The Dragon Lives Again. Full-sized ones, and we photographed them, I color-corrected them, and in the cases, full color, you'll have a lobby card of that movie just for yourself, which I don't think I've seen them on the internet either, so they probably didn't get scanned or anything like that. That's right.
So, folks, the first installment of Important Cinema Club Bargain Bin Classics, The Dragon Lives Again, they'll be individually numbered, and they'll be available... Where will they be available?
You can get them at goldninjavideo.com.
Gold Ninja Video?
goldninjavideo.com. And it'll be limited to 125. You'll see, I'm probably going to have to write the number on each disc that goes out.
Hand-numbered.
Buy The Dragon Lives Again. As of this recording, it'll be $10. So, which is...
That's bargain bin price.
Yeah, it is, with all the stuff that you get.
Remember, you're paying for the extras.
Yeah, you are. I did my best with the video. Fist of Fear, Touch of Death is actually in widescreen.
Oh, yeah, we do have a widescreen presentation of Fist of Fear, Touch of Death.
And The Dragon Lives Again, the opening credits are in widescreen, and I went in and I fixed the copy that I have, but the rest is cropped full screen.
I mean, one of the appeals of The Dragon Lives Again in full screen is it really does look like you're looking in a portal to hell.
Yes, it does.
Do we have any letters this week?
Yes, we do. As per usual, you can send us letters at importantcinemaclubpodcast@gmail.com. And our first letter is from Nikolai Fugate, and it goes, Justin and Will, over the last few months, I've been listening to the podcast, and now I have only 20 or so episodes left. Thank you for your service. I came upon the podcast from the No Such Thing as a Bad Movie one, and was also surprised to recognize Will's voice as the guy who had done a guest episode on the Talking Simpsons podcast. I've greatly enjoyed the podcast throughout. First, I went through all the episodes of the subject matter I was familiar with, but the true test has been how much I've enjoyed the ones I have little experience with, and when your discussion makes me want to seek out the movie. Detour being the best example.
Oh, excellent.
I gotta re-listen to that Detour episode. What did we say? I guess we were just like...
I think it became a running gag on the show, too.
Yeah. Outside of simple praise for the podcast, we always love that, although much deserved, I wanted to get your opinions on the love it or hate it phenomenon that has seemed to infect discussions of movies and other media more and more as I've grown older. So often when I see a movie now and afterwards discuss it with someone and say, I liked it and it was okay, or criticize something in a movie that I otherwise enjoyed, I have found the person reacting as if I hated it. It seems that for many people, the only valid feelings are pure love or hate. When I said I thought The Last Jedi was okay, I was lumped in by several friends criticisms as one of those people hating it, even though my criticisms were not the same as the mob online. I think it was a solid B or B-. I've come to see this behavior as a symptom of so many people incorporate movies and other media directly into their personalities, take personal offense when someone does not share their opinion. I don't know if it is also a byproduct of getting older, as when I was a kid, so many things were love it or hate it because my pool of comparisons was so shallow. Just curious for your opinions on this. Finally, as much as I enjoy the Important Cinema Club, I must say I truly miss loose cannons and hope for its eventual return someday. You were getting to the good stuff. Nick Fugate. Okay. Thank you for telling me how to pronounce your name at the end.
Yeah, you were getting into the good stuff.
Matthew moved away. Like, that's literally the reason we stopped doing the podcast.
Well, maybe he'll be back one day.
One day, yeah. Come back from his glitzy LA life to us plebs in Toronto.
So, a few points about what Nikolai said. I mean, we do sort of define ourselves by the things that we like. And so it's, easier than you would think probably to take it personally when people don't like a movie. And, something that I've noticed from criticizing Marvel movies, and look, I'm a hero. I know it's the bravest thing in the world to criticize Marvel, but sometimes if you say that you're wary of the Disney company or their business model, sometimes people will say something like, yeah, okay, well, am I really destroying cinema if I like Marvel movies? And the answer to that is no, of course not. Like, no. I don't give a shit if you like Marvel movies, great, life is short. Individual consumers enjoying something has nothing to do with whether you think of the business itself.
Yeah, I mean, but if you write that on Twitter, oh boy, will they come defending it.
Yeah, so people, I don't know.
I mean, this is me saying, like, I enjoy very much watching Marvel movies, and I've said this before, but the people online defending it like it's a representation of their identity scares the shit out of me.
Well, it scares me too, because you can imagine how an unscrupulous corporation can use this.
Yes, of course.
If they can, because people talk about the fans as if it's an identity group.
Like, I was talking recently about, or this was actually months ago, I posted like, Disney owns Fox now and they're going to not allow theatrical distribution. And people came at me as if like, how dare you say Disney would do something that they have done throughout their entire career.
And now they're doing it.
They're doing it,
yeah. And, this sucks too, because if you criticize Disney or Marvel, people will say, well, okay, just let people like what they like, which is fine until... now I can't see any Fox movies in repertory cinemas anymore, so now I can't like what I like.
Yep, that's right.
It's actively harming my ability to like what I like.
And, they'll come after you, and if that thing proves to be true, you'll never get, I mean, it wouldn't make you feel any better, but like, oh, I'm gonna have to rethink the way that I think. They'll go, oh yeah, okay, push it aside, and just jump on the next argument. I mean, as someone, if I recommend something to someone, and they don't like it, it does kind of hurt my feelings a little bit.
I guess. I mean, we've all had that experience of, like, showing something that you like to somebody, and not reacting to it the way you want them to.
And I mean, it's twofold, because you can't know that person. You don't know how they're going to react to it. But it's also, you could view it as like, oh, I guess you don't like the things that I like.
And do you not like me?
Yeah, I don't think I think that way. But because it's funny that I do like all this weird stuff, but I may be the most conservative recommender of like anyone that I know. Is that I have pals that they'll recommend things, and I'll be standing beside them, and I'm like, what? Like, they're not going to like that. And then that person will not like that. And it's like, why? And there's something
There have been many times when we've been talking, and you'll say, like, oh, you're not going to like it.
Yeah, exactly. And I'll be like, oh, I really like it. I'm like, but you won't.
Yeah, and it's like, you know what? Justin probably knows my taste better than anybody. Why not?
And Will will sometimes be like, oh, I will watch it. I didn't like it. It's like, yeah, that's right. And I think it's I don't think it's something I pride myself on, but I hope that if I recommend something to people at this point, and if they don't like it, I'm like, oh, I guess I don't know you as well as I thought I did.
Yeah. Another thing is, as far as the whole love it or hate it thing goes, you see it online a lot where media companies are driven by clicks, and an ambivalent review doesn't get a click in the same way that... have you seen Vice will often post articles like, does Gremlins 2 actually suck?
Yeah.
Or does RoboCop actually suck?
Well,
and when you click on the article, it's like, oh no, it doesn't suck. Like, this person likes it. But the framing is...
And I know people are like, the de-evolution of the critical discussion online. And it's just that if they wrote long, Pauline Kael-like essays... no one would friggin' read them. That's the issue. That's why people like start usually from that base and then write something else. It's because they want that click. It's called clickbait for a reason. You know, people said, where did the critical conversation of Pauline Kael go? Probably in some zine you're not reading. Like, Pauline Kael was able to reach such a wide audience because she was one of the few voices in that sphere.
That's right, yeah.
And now that doesn't really exist because people want stuff that's fast and they want it now because there's so many other options. Why would I read this 10,000 word essay when I can get it in 50 words?
I do think that if Pauline Kael were still alive, she might still be able to thrive because
she'd be writing, yeah. I mean,
because she's actually good.
Yes,
like there are a lot of people who write. Okay, I know that we have issues with her, but
and she's also a bit of a troll.
Yeah,
so she would get those
right.
clicks because even at that time, you know, people would say that she would actually wait until other critical responses came in before she then wrote her essay.
Armand White does that.
Yes, he does. It's very much like the Ernst Lubitsch films, Jack and Jill.
Do you remember that Armand White actually liked The Hurt Locker until it came out, and then all of a sudden...
I did not know that.
Then all of a sudden he didn't like it anymore.
And I think that, like, even as human beings, I think we're wired that when somebody is like, well, I don't like this, you're like, I gotta write a response. This is when, like, self-control.
Yeah.
Like, where you have to be, you know what? They don't like it. Doesn't affect me.
That's right.
I still like it.
That's right.
And that is a hard, feeling to fight sometimes. And it's easy to go into it. But then you just gotta take a step back and be like, but what will it get me? Am I going to convince this person? No.
What I tell myself is, you know, I am Toronto's most influential cinephile. I have 2 podcasts.
You don't tell yourself that. You just write it on Twitter.
Everyone knows me. Yeah, well, I'm hoping it becomes a self-perpetuating. Like by saying it becomes true.
You know, because if we're going to be honest here, Will's tweets drive me crazy.
I know they do.
Yeah, and I've told him this. And the lesson that I learned is that, like, I cannot, respond to them.
Just, if you mute me, it's okay.
Yep.
I don't take it personally. I like your tweets.
Yeah, you like my tweets all the time. I like some of your tweets, but, the lesson I learned was, I can't... What am I going to get from responding to Will? Maybe I'll make him feel bad, but that's not the intent that original tweet that he had was for.
You know what the thing is? You know I'm a nice guy.
I do know you're a nice guy.
Yeah.
That's the thing.
Yeah, you just hate that side of me, and that's okay.
Yeah, that's fine. But you know what? Other people... like my brother, love that side of you. Yeah.
Sounds like a great guy.
Exactly. So, you know, if something's not for me, people are so defensive because there's so much stuff that they feel they need to hold on to something and defend it just to make it have value. But the other side of the coin is there's so much stuff. So it doesn't really matter. If you like it, you like it.
Yeah.
And I mean, that doesn't really help you if your friend is like, why do you hate this movie? You know what? Don't be friends with them.
That's right.
Easy solution.
Live alone.
Yeah, in a shed with your 2 best friends. The Important Cinema Club.
That's right. Pretend to be the 3rd person in the room.
All right. So what are we doing next week, Will?
Next week, we will finally be looking at another legendary director. Another director who it's surprising we haven't got to earlier.
Anytime that I write, which women director should helm this franchise? What's the name that comes up?
Catherine Bigelow.
Yep. Catherine Bigelow is one we probably haven't tackled because, she was in the conversations for so long.
Yeah.
To a ridiculous degree. To the degree that you're like, why would she have any interest in this, movie that you think she should be involved with other than the fact that she's a woman? But she's had a very interesting career.
So I think we'll probably be watching Point Break.
And I'll probably be checking out, Blue Steel or Near Dark, all those early 80s films that kind of defined the 80s and the 90s. And Will said, we'll watch Near Dark and Point Break. And I was like, Will... you gotta watch one of her later period films.
And I'm like, I don't wanna.
But you know what? The Hurt Locker. That was the film that kind of brought her back. Nobody thought it was going to be the hit that it was. And I think it'll be interesting to revisit it. See the movie that gave Jeremy Renner the box office career that he had.
Yep. Yeah, Hurt Locker, I remember it being entertaining. Let's check it out.
All right, so that's what we're doing next week. Until then, my name's Justin McClue.
I'm Will Sloan.
Thanks for listening. So when I was sitting watching a certain film that I saw in 70mm recently, that I will not name it because the discourse...
No more.
no more. Anything but that. I saw the trailer for The Joker on the big screen.
I was over the moon watching a trailer for Joker on 70mm film.
And it ended with see it on 70mm. And I laughed so hard when I saw that. And then I stopped laughing because I knew I was the clown. Because they had gotten me. I was going to see the Joker in 70mm.
It said, see it on 70mm, and I said, thank you, I think I will, in fact. Because as bad as it looks, how often you get a chance to see a movie on 70mm?
Wait, what do you mean how bad as it looks, Will? Aren't you ready to finally have those superhero films that are clogging the box office deconstructed in a gritty, real way?
Right. You know, pow, bam, comic books are not just for kids anymore.
Yep. I'm getting like friggin' deja vu that's stretching like a million miles away.
What if the Joker were not fun?
Yes.
What if it were the story of an unpleasant incel?
Wait, is the Joker not fun? Isn't that every film appearance that he's had?
This one, of course, is visibly indebted to the work of executive producer Martin Scorsese.
Ugh.
And I see the trailer for Joker, and I sort of think, okay, you know, I already have Taxi Driver, I already have King of Comedy. Why would I want to watch a shitty version of those?
And it's not even like, oh wow, we're drawing inspiration. It looks like a fan film. There's even like a garbage strike going on.
And it just seems a little depressing. It's like, oh, okay, you're not ready for King of Comedy? Well, here you can watch it with the Joker in it.
But the King of Comedy is in it as well because Robert De Niro is appearing.
That's
right.
I
mean, to get excited about the Joker, and this happens all the time, and I feel so bad for news, like especially film news websites, have to write like articles about trailers being like, oh, what do you think? Maybe they could pull it out. And it's like, no, I've seen that director's films. They are not good. Why do I think that this one will be?
Well, I know that it has been programmed already at 2 prominent fall festivals, Venice in the official competition, and of course a TIFF gala where, various boards of directors will be at Roy Thompson Hall watching it.
It stands shoulder to shoulder with, what is that Max Landis film that starred Sam Rockwell? Also a TIFF gala premiere.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, again, we're going to see the movie. So us discussing it being like, oh, wow, it looks so bad. Why would they make it? One, please.
I do like Joaquin Phoenix. And
I love Joaquin
Phoenix. It looks like he's unleashed. So, yeah.
I mean, I saw Batman vs. Superman in 70mm at that theater. And, the Joker...
I bet it looked great to see those digital images on beautiful film. And speaking of digital images... Martin Scorsese was in the news this week for another reason.
Speaking of stars of the Joker as well, Martin Scorsese's new film. But like you mentioned, he was also in the news. What was it? I didn't follow it.
Was he in the news for something?
You didn't see that Twitter thing where people were like, Martin Scorsese's old news. He just makes movies about gangsters. And they were dragging like his editor as well.
I feel like, I don't think that had anything to do with anything he did. It's just like every 6 weeks, the Scorsese-Tarantino debates flare up.
That's what it was.
Because
it was Tarantino connected.
They are emblematic of like dude bro dorm room filmmakers.
Yeah. And then you're like, wait, but what about Scorsese and The Age of Innocence or Kundun or all the other stuff he made? And then I go, I don't need to reply to that, and I just push it away. Yeah. Just don't look.
Marty's fine.
Every time I mute a conversation, I go, shh, as I go and click, and it makes me feel great. And Martin Scorsese's new film, his
years in the making,
his Ishtar, if you will, The Irishman,
$200 million budget because of all that de-aging. We finally got to see.
Couldn't you have done it with makeup?
We finally got to see some of the digital de-aging. You know what? They couldn't do it with makeup because have you seen Robert De Niro lately?
Oh yes,
he looks
I have.
awful.
Saw him in the trailer for the Joker.
Yeah.
I'm curious to see the real de-aging because what you got was Robert De Niro 15, 20 years ago. But according to people that read the script, there's a Robert De Niro like 25 years old. Did he play that role? Why not just cast another actor?
Yeah, I don't know. I'm very eager to see it. I mean, we saw some of the footage of him de-aged in the trailer, and yeah, it's got a bit of that Uncanny Valley thing. But honestly, like, it looks no worse than just any special effects movie out today.
I mean, if they can get, like, Sam Jackson de-aged for Captain Marvel, I'm sure they can get it. And Martin Scorsese has talked about how uncomfortable he is and how on the ball he is with this de-aging tech. So that makes me really curious. And I mean, the trailer that came out, it looks like a Martin Scorsese film.
And yeah, I think if this technology doesn't look quite perfect, I'll suspend my disbelief because...
It's a Martin Scorsese movie.
And you suspend your disbelief at, like, every movie.
Everyone. Like, you see it and you go, yes, that is a CG effect.
Okay, you remember the scene in Avengers Endgame when all the female superheroes
Yes.
come together?
None of them are in the same room.
None of them in the same room. It's like, if you can suspend your disbelief for that, you can suspend it for this.
And Martin Scorsese is a master of the CG effect, because remember that clip that was going around of The Wolf of Wall Street of how much of it was digital and just never knew?
Yeah.
So, like, he's on the ball. He's trying to do as well as he can. Even, like, his kids' film, Hugo, tons of CG effects. Some of them you realized, some of them you didn't. Didn't matter. Just suspend your goddamn disbelief.
And he's a great filmmaker. That's
Love
just
him.
my take.
Yeah, what was the last bad Martin Scorsese film? I guess
Maybe The Aviator.
Oh, I love The Aviator. I think the last one that I was unenthused about was Shutter Island.
Shutter Island is flawed, although I liked it. I liked the kind of Val Lewton quality
Yeah, I think that
it.
if I watched it again, the fact that I'm like, this is how it ends, that kind of disappointment will be gone.
I think it could have benefited from maybe being just a little sleazier.
Yes. Or maybe even a little bit shorter. Come on, you're inspired by Val Newton? Give us a 75-minute movie, Marty.
Yeah, but I did like it. I think maybe Gangs of New York.
Yeah, but it's such like an
got good stuff
ambitious
in it.
boondoggle that...
Yeah, it's got a lot of good stuff.
You know what? We didn't even talk about what our Patreon episode. Speaking of ambitious bondoggles, Richard Kelly's Southland Tales.
That's right, the famous sophomore slump film, but is it, in fact, a masterpiece?
You're going to have to listen to us to find out. I mean, speaking of love it or hate it, did we love it? Did we hate it?
Was it somewhere in between?
Yeah, probably that in between.
Probably in between,
part.
yeah.
And make sure to bone up on all your prequel graphic novels to get the whole story. And if people don't remember Southland Tales, The Rock, the shit bandit himself, Sean William Scott,
Cop out.
Amy Poehler, John Lovitz, Christopher Lambert, they're all in this film.
Elderly Kevin Smith is in it.
Elderly Kevin Smith, because he time traveled. So listen to that episode on Patreon, patreon.com/. The Important Cinema Club, $5 a month to become a subscriber, and The Irishman, getting back to it. I'm excited. I'll watch it.
Oh my god, I mean, of course.
Will you see it in theaters or will you watch it on Netflix? Because we have the option because we live in Toronto.
Yeah, if we get it in a theater here, I'll go see it. Way.
We have to get it in the theater. The Lightbox has played every Netflix film, Triple Frontier, Roma, everything.
Yeah, if they don't get this one.
Oh, man.